Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. And today in this video, we are back with some more Russian and Ukraine updates. And this is kind of what we're just going to kind of start probably a series on, is kind of just doing some news updates relatively almost every single day, or something like that, almost every single day. And we actually have some pretty cool stuff to talk about today, and just relatively cool kind of this stuff that has happened in Ukraine. So more of like on the military side and everything. By the way, I'm getting all my news articles today from the Independent, AP News, and Reuters, and the lines for these are Ukraine. For the Independent is Ukraine's war latest. Kyiv fires long-range Flamingo missiles at Russian oil facility. On AP, it is EU renews demands that Ukraine cracks down on corruption in wake of major energy scandal. And on Ruzzer, I'm using IMF to start mission to Ukraine soon. Stress needs to be anti-corruption efforts. Okay, so now that we have all the news people I'm using today, and so I don't get plagiarized or anything for this. Basically, my whole thing behind it is, so what's happening basically on the military/war front of everything is it's kind of very simple. Like, Ukrainian forces have launched their Flamingo missiles, which if you don't know what a Flamingo missile is, it is a Ukrainian developed missile that was like long range. It's cruise missiles and stuff like that. It was just basically so that they could launch these themselves without having to get permission from other countries. And that can just take a lot longer and everything to try to get permission from other countries whenever you're in a war and everything. But they basically have struck oil facilities in Russian-occupied zones such as Zhoiposh, Ostrava, and Crimea Peninsula. This is kind of more of like a major thing here, because if you guys don't really know how Russia's making a lot of their money as of right now, it is through their oil. So if Ukraine's kind of more able to kind of cut their oil supply off and everything, it will more than likely start to ruin the Russian economy, or the Russians will have to quickly shift their economy to something else that's very lucrative in money and they have a lot of, and it's relatively fast to make and everything. But on the other hand is Russia continues to mount large-scale attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. For example, Kyiv faces more than 12 hours of emergency power outage after a major strike. This is kind of more like a major thing. And by the way, I'm also taking off my notes. I'm not reading off these news people, but that's kind of where I got all my notes from, is these news people. And this kind of made more of a major thing, because if Russia starts to, for one, hit civilian buildings, which is really bad. You shouldn't be hitting civilian buildings in the first place. But once again, typically not a civilian building. It's technically power. And if you can cut power supplies off to people and stuff, it's going to start affecting these people's lives and affecting these people's morale towards their own country. Because are you really going to stay be like, oh my god, this war's so great and everything, if you don't have heat, if you don't have gas and all this stuff? That's the whole thing behind it is I don't believe it's going to get that bad or anything to that point, but that's just the whole thing behind it is that is more of a strategical move off of Russia's part. But off of Ukraine's part, they made very strategical moves with hitting, the oil facilities and oil stuff like that inside of Russia. And it could have, and this kind of starts to cripple both sides of them, but it's more of the question of who's going to cripple who first, I think. But more on the front lines stuff, Russian forces are reported to have gained territory in the southern regions and continued fighting intensities in areas such as Pokrovsk, or however you say that. I'm not very good with pronouncing names or anything, and that's just kind of my bad and everything. But basically, what is happening here is, once again, I'm pretty sure I talked about this stuff yesterday. There was fog in one region and stuff like that, and it does kind of seem like Russia is starting to go on this more of an offensive to try to take more land faster and everything. It does seem to be working as right now, but once again, the Battle of the, I think it was in World War I, the Battle of the Bulge or whatever, it wasn't really a worth it fight, because the Germans ended up using a huge amount of resources trying to do that final push into France in World War I. and it just kind of forced that whole line to kind of collapse because that was their last amount of resources, pretty much. And that's the thing, as I'm not sitting there saying that's what's happening in Russia right now, but that could be something that we see is happening maybe, is that maybe Russia's getting more desperate, maybe Russia's trying to end this conflict, because maybe Russia's just starting to, economy's relatively starting to suffer and stuff like that. I'm not going to say you're making an assumption or nothing, but I'm going to assume that both sides' economies have suffered since the start of a war. That's just kind of what happens in most times of war times, is your economy goes somewhat down normally. But this is also, like, I think like day 1359 of the war. This is like a really long war, by the way. I'm just have to say that right now. But I really want to get more into this energy thing. I talked about this yesterday, and I didn't really want to say if it was true or not, but I think it is more true than ever, because I'm seeing a lot more reports on this and stuff. But it's basically, it is a nuclear company. It's a state-owned nuclear company. Apparently there was like $100 million in alleged kickbacks. There's not really much else to really be said about this, but that, in response, Ukrainian's prime minister has announced sweeping audits of all state-owned enterprises. Several high-level registrations, including energy and justice administration, have followed. Following with all those, several high, sweeping audits and everything of including energy and justice administration, this kind of does follow into with the International Monitoring Fund is prepping a new mission to Ukraine to assess financial needs and emphasize anti-corruption reforms as conditions for further aid. Now, this is sort of a good thing, because once again, it is really hard to run a country, especially in a wartime, I would have to say. And so trying to keep your own corruption down is hard, and having somebody else that can relatively do it for you would make it a whole lot easier for Ukraine to actually more focus up on this front line and kind of go about it that way. But at the same time, the European Union is renewing its demands that Ukraine intensify governance and rule of law reforms in the light of scandals while still providing financial aid. So it doesn't mean just because this has all happened, doesn't mean European Union is going to be pulling out of them. They're just going to basically try and get Ukraine to get this more of under control and stuff. And that's the whole thing behind it is trying to get that stuff underneath control can sometimes be hard. I mean, I have to say this right now, even in some countries that are at peace, they can't even get their corruption under control. And it's kind of hard for a country that is at war to get their country under control. But it's just, I don't know, man. It is this very, very odd time that we live in. And I just think it's relatively an interesting time that we live in. But now we're going to get more into gaming news. But, this is more gaming news tonight and stuff. So basically, Ubisoft has delayed its half-year financial results and requests that its shares and bonds be suspended from trading on Euronext. Now, does this kind of matter? I mean, it does kind of matter because, once again, this could kind of mean that maybe Ubisoft isn't having a good year. I don't really know what it all means exactly. I don't know why they would be suspending their shares and bonds off of a trading thing. That really makes no sense. Unless Ubisoft's maybe going for a different branding or something. Maybe they're going to get something different soon. But then making games, because I don't really know what else Ubisoft does but make games. But also following that though, there was more than 200 employees at Rockstar Games have signed a letter calling for the reinstatement of their recently fired staff. Now, if you don't really know what is happening with this, this is more we're more now talking about whenever what's it called? I think there was some leaks out of the GTA 6 thing by employees, and from that Rockstar I think fired all those employees that did it. I don't remember how many there are. And this is just kind of more these 200 employees being oh, well, that's kind of bullshit. We need to get these people back. Maybe because they were relatively good developers. I don't really know. But at the same time, making a game like that, because what has it been? It's been over 10 years at this point. So like, making a game like that, that's not like, oh my god, the end of the world type situation. And the reality of it is, I think Rockstar Games should have probably sat down with most of those employees and been like, yo, don't do this again, otherwise you're going to get fired, type deal. Give them like a warning or something. Don't just instantly fire them. It's not that big of a deal if they leak some stuff about the game. It'd be more like, it'd be worse if they like would have leaked passwords or something. You know, it's just like a massive thing like that. It's not major. Nothing major happened there. But Embracers Group, owners of several major game franchises, reported a large drop in operating profits, 79%, but still beats market expected. I've never personally heard of these people or anything. I just kind of seen them in the headlines and stuff of today, and I don't really know what they exactly make. But the fact that their market is crashing so fast is kind of sucks, to be honest, because I have to say this right now, AAA games have gotten bad, and I'm not sure to see indie games nowadays succeed, and I don't know if these people are AAA or not, but I guess if they're owners of several major game franchises, more than likely they are a AAA game company. So I don't really know, dude. Like, my whole thing behind it is, like, Call of Duties and stuff, like, I feel like they have gotten good but bad at the same time. Like, some years they're really good, and in some years it's just a complete miss. And that's just the thing that sucks about it. I get you're going to have some years that are misses, but you shouldn't have it, like, alternating every other year type deal. And that's, like, just the whole thing behind it. But then also within that, Unreal Engine 5.7 has been released, which if you don't know what Unreal Engine is, it's a thing that you can use to make games and stuff like that. But basically, this also brings new features that aimed at building large-scale, high finality. I don't even know what the fuck I typed here. I'm sorry. I probably copied and pasted some of this stuff. Real-time worlds, right? And the whole thing behind it is like, that's kind of major because it's going to give a new level of game creation to everybody. And that even includes Fortnite itself, because once again, made by Epic Games. They're probably going to use it for Fortnite or something like that. But it's just like certain stuff like that has like basically, it's going to like revolutionize the gaming industry. The people that are like constantly like making their softwares better and better, they are the reason gaming is getting better and better normally. Now, not always. Obviously, some softwares, you know, that's not always the reason. It also does take a relatively good developer to make these games. But if you don't have a good software to make a good game idea, you're not going to have ever a good game. So it's kind of like a both like cat and mouse type thing, where it's like, you know, you kind of need the cat and kind of need the mouse to kind of get the whole situation working here, you know, type deal. But what is it? I don't really know what this is or anything. I did not look into this one at all, so you can look into this one at all. But apparently, Value Corp unveils a new hardware console, the Steam Machine, positioning itself as a stronger competitor in the living room gaming space. I don't really know about that one. I feel like Xbox and stuff is relatively good already, and I don't know if I would ever actually buy another like different like company's name brand. But yeah.